My name's Lance Rufino. I'm an artist. I make custom sneakers. I'm 23 years old and I've been doing this since, oh man, since I was like 15, 16 years old. What first got me into the sneaker community is way back in high school. I went to Bedford High and everyone loved their Jordans. They loved the newest Nikes, Adidas, and this whole sneaker culture. And I didn't really have the money to like afford like $100 Jordans for the Air Jordan 1s or the Bred 4s. So my friend showed me on Tumblr people painting their shoes and like taking like Sperry's like boat shoes and doing these like really cool intricate designs. And I was thinking like I could do that. And so I would just go to Walmart and pay like $5. I'd go and get this apple barrel paint, like 50 cents a bottle, really cheap, disposable brushes. And I would just take a reference image and just paint away. And that's kind of how it all started. Essentially, the community and how like it inspired me and how I really got into it. It started out with Tumblr. Back in high school, I wasn't very into social media, and as time went on, I kind of gained that traction, looking more into things, learning how to make shoes better, paint them better, different materials, and experimenting. And essentially, with hip hop, I've always loved hip hop. It's my favorite music genre, and within hip hop, sneaker culture is just it's essential. It's absolutely massive. You see all these rappers, you see celebrities, you see athletes, and they're all just wearing these custom shoes. And so I'd follow people on Instagram like the Shoe Surgeon, who essentially modernized cobbling, where he would take old cobbler techniques and modernize them to make Yeezys from scratch, make Jordan 1s, Jordan 4s, NMDs, any type of sneaker. And he's made shoes for Justin Bieber, Drake, like any major celebrity you can think of. He's made custom shoes for him. LeBron James, where he made a Jordan 1 inspired sneaker out of 24 karat gold, crocodile leather, and then used the rest of the gold to make a 24 karat chain. That is, I mean, that's just astonishing to me that he's able to be in such a peak of his career that he made sneakers out of gold for the number one basketball player. It's not really people I look up to and strive to work towards that in a way. There's people that like I like their artwork and I respect that. But as far as someone that influences me is people from my past that shaped who I am now, such as when I went to GLCPS. Mr. Veccarelli, he taught me all of like everything you need to know about art. I started out with stick figures. My art was terrible. And I started just like, it was really disproportionate, terrible portraits. And I got bored in class a lot. So I'd always sneak off and I'd go to the art room and I'd be like, hey, Mr. V, I've been working on this drawing. And he'd give me like tips and hints and he'd show me how to really refine it and saying like, oh, when you draw an eye, it's not necessarily like an oval, but it's more of just very linear lines that you sketch over to master the look of the eye. Or even in college, the next step, because once I refined and was able to make a solid portrait, now the next step was how do I sell this to people? And in college, I had this roommate, Cedric, and he saw my shoes and he's like, bro, you do that? And I'm like, yeah, I paint them by hand. I've been doing this for years. And he said, my friend Abby, he's got a brand called Overlooked, a big brand at UMass Dartmouth, huge on campus. You see people walking around with OVR LKD all over their clothes all the time. And when he saw my art, he's like, I'll give you a couple pairs of sneakers. Here's some ideas. Go crazy with it. And then I made some custom Tims. I made custom Air Forces for him. And when I knew everything was really going to pop off was when I walked into his dorm. I gave him both the sneakers. 3 of his friends are sitting on the couch and they said, bro, you really did that? And I said, yeah. And next thing I know, I walk out with 4 pairs of Tims in my arms, trying to like carry them like this. Word got around and I started making consistent custom shoes. And on my winter breaks, I'd be sleeping 3 hours a night just because I constantly want to make sneakers. Like productivity is my drug. I just want to keep working, try and get to that next step in life. And I think during like one winter break, I made like at least 13 pairs of custom boat shoes. Waco the Child, he's a TikTok rapper. His hit song Fast blew up on TikTok real quick. I just DM'd him one day and I said, hey, I really like your music. Like, I want to make you a pair of sneakers. And he said, yeah. And from there, then other verified people started hitting me up for sneakers. And I knew this is my foot in the door to getting into that celebrity culture, being that guy that could one day make shoes for LeBron James, for Drake, for DaBaby, for all these really big major celebrities. Some of my earliest creative experiences that I had, to really introduce me to my love of art, I was like, as young as I could hold a pencil. And some, Yu-Gi-Oh was huge when I was a kid. Pokemon cards. I mean, no one knew how to play Pokemon cards, and I had these Pokemon cards, and I thought I like these little creatures. Like I want to recreate them, kind of like when you do a still life. And so I just have the card next to me, and I just draw on a piece of paper. Like they were horribly disproportionate, and they were totally off. But I kept wanting to get better over time, and it slowly got there. And that's when my parents are like, he really likes art, and they get me like little paint sets, like Crayola crayons, like the ones with the sharpener, the colored pencils, and kind of just really feed into that and help me build that skill and that hobby that I loved. The Nightmare Before Christmas piece, it was like around Halloween, and that's when I really started experimenting with paints. It's probably one of the first pieces I had documented. And what really drove me is I didn't have the money to get those types of Jordans. And, when you kind of look poor, kids are cruel. So I thought like, what's a way for me to fit in? And I thought my artwork is a way to kind of step in the door. And when I started making shoes like the Nightmare Before Christmas that you see, that mentality with people changed, and people stopped, talking like that, saying like, oh, you look poor, you have crap sneakers, you can't afford these Jordans. And so, but when they saw like my boat shoes with all the designs like the Night Before Christmas, they thought, oh my God, that's sick. That's so cool. How'd you do that? And when I could change the mentality of people around me, I knew I could go somewhere with this. And so I was just watching the movie, and I thought, it's Halloween. I got to make something spooky. The toe box is a lot more canvas compared to other sneakers, where it's a little more compact. There's a lot going on, a lot of complexity. And since I was very new to it, I needed the most amount of space in case there was mistakes or, the fine details that I wasn't quite sure on how to deal with yet at the time, since I just started. So if you see from the picture on the portrait with Jack Skellington, you can see there's like a crack like definitively down the middle, because when you're walking, you crease your shoes. And I didn't realize the different materials you need. So I started out with like the cheapest paints I could find, which are acrylic. They're very plasticky, non-flexible. And when you paint and you walk, you bend the shoe, and when you bend the shoe, the paint doesn't adhere as well as you think, so the paint will crack, and when the paint cracks, it then peels, and then the whole thing will eventually fall apart as time goes on. So it was a lot of trial and error, and I made a lot of mistakes over the years trying to figure out like which ones, but it worked out pretty well once I found out like on Instagram and YouTube and like troubleshooting all of these different issues that I've been experiencing and how I can make a better quality shoe. And so that way, when I had my bigger commissions, I worked out 99% of those issues. You'd always have like that 1% where there's always that one little factor, or it's a shoe you've never really worked on personally. Because I've worked from canvas to leather to animal skin for people's shoes that I painted. So you got to look at it from a bunch of different angles. As far as brushes, I burn through brushes. I just buy the cheapest Walmart ones. Every big artist I know, we all just buy like the cheapest brushes, because those expensive horsehair ones are just, they don't last, and it's not worth $25 a brush. I've had my fair share of errors, and it's a learning experience that I totally embrace. I'm not afraid to throw my errors out there. When I walked in them, they started to really degrade. I just retire them and keep them in my closets for like memories and stuff. Some of the older boat shoes that I use with acrylics, you can't really restore them because you have to use the same paints. You can't really mix mediums like that. So if I just restored them with acrylic paint, they would just crack in like a couple days after that, especially being worn and torn. But with other sneakers that I have that I used Angelus leather paints, which are specifically meant for sneakers, leather materials, you can even like paint furniture with it. It's very flexible, and you just prep it properly, add the paint, and then when you walk, the paint will bend with the shoe, so you don't have to worry about that issue anymore. And you can restore. There's plenty of times with customers who would buy original Jordans, and on the midsole, paint would chip, say, can you fix it? I said, yeah. I would just sand down the paint, and then I would just repaint it over. These are a pair of Bred 4s I recently restored, where the midsole here, all the paint was chipped, and so I sanded it all off, and I redid the white and the black parts. And when you sand it off, what you have to do now is to prep, because every shoe has a glossy cover. When you feel it, it feels nice and smooth. But when you use, say, I use industrial grade acetone, I'll put it, I know industrial, it's very harsh chemicals, but it makes the quality of the shoe worth it. And so you just soak a cotton ball with the acetone and you just rub it into the sneaker. And when you feel it again, you know that glossy coating is gone when it feels very tough, rubbery. Your finger doesn't really glide. There's a lot of friction. And so right there is when you reach the base of the sneaker and you know you can just paint right over it. That was inspired from, it was a recreation from Daniel Cordes. He's a big shoe customizer on Instagram, on a lot of sneaker pages. They show off a lot of his artwork. And when I looked at it, like, I respect his art, I thought it was really cool. But when I looked into the details of the face, I thought, I can do better. I'm very competitive, and I thought I can recreate this and really be more detailed. So when Lil Uzi Vert dropped his single That Way, they sampled the Backstreet Boys, I was like, I gotta do it. It was a great song. And so what I would do is, if you look at the picture, I took the Nike swoosh and I took a box cutter. I chopped off the check and then I super glued it back onto the sneaker so it forms a heart. So on the cover art, it's a giant heart puff of smoke, and it's kind of like a beam kind of going through them, very Scott Pilgrim inspired artwork. And if you zoom in too, I would take a toothpick and I would dip it in paint. And for the tiniest details, I would dab with the toothpick to get all the finest parts like right there. Because when it comes to artwork, I'm a perfectionist. I just have to get every single detail right. Yeah, so normally, so here's a pair of Vans. It's kind of, took like the old school shoes that I used to work on, brought them back, and it was do like a Gucci monogram. And the purpose with the airbrush that really helps is it creates when you can add light layers, because with regular paint, you can't just like dab it to create a fade effect. You need an airbrush. So then around the areas, it kind of looks like it's charred. So it looks like the Gucci monogram is burnt underneath to really make the whole thing pop. So it allows you to essentially create effects that you could never do by hand before. Status thing. Just like when you buy Starbucks, people buy it 90% for the brand because it's $6 for a cup of coffee. Because you want to walk in with that white and green cup. When you wear Yeezys, you walk in and people think you got the drop because these sneakers sell out in under 60 seconds. You were able to cop a pair without having to go to the resale market and pay 10 times as much. It goes for anything. It's definitely, it's a class thing. Like people who like, especially goes back to New Bedford High, where people who wore Gucci belts. I saw a kid one day, he was showing off his new $300 Gucci belt. He saved up his checks he worked at McDonald's because I asked him. And then at the end of the day, when I was walking home, I saw him walking home towards public housing, and I have no issue. Whatever you spend your money on, do you. But it's definitely a class thing where you want to look rich, and that's what they definitely put into us. And definitely, I do buy into it a little bit because it looks nice. You want something nice. You want to treat yourself, be able to feel good about yourself in those aspects. We all have our own vices on things we enjoy that we know we spend money on that is completely stupid, but we do it anyway. It's all about status. It all is to create a perception. You walk into a club, every single person has at least one piece of designer clothing on because they want to create a perception towards strangers, and a way to perceive, saying, I have the cash to afford these kinds of things. Brands do come and go as far as fashion because you don't see anyone rocking an Osiris tattoo. Because we all remember those Osiris sneakers, the big puffy ones, and everyone with the Cookie Monster snapbacks and the gangsta Looney Tunes Bugs Bunny, As far as those tattoos, whether they remain relevant or not, I'm not quite sure, but I sure hope so because that's permanent. With those shoes, the Dragon Ball Z ones you see, that was probably my most expensive commission I have ever worked on. There's times when I worked with sneakers that are like Converse's, about $50, Vans, $50, Jordans, 100, 125. Those that you see are Giuseppe Zanotti's made out of crocodile skin. Those are $1,200 sneakers. So there's this level of nervousness when you're working on sneakers sometimes because customers will either ship the sneakers to me and I work on them, or they pay me extra so I can order the sneaker in their size. But with those, the guy shipped his Giuseppe Zanotti sneakers to me. They were made out of crocodile skin, and the paint originally was 24 karat gold flakes. And so working on those, I was like, I can't mess this up. There's no way I can replace $1,200 sneakers. I got to work on this so hard to make sure that he enjoys them because, boy, if I mess this up, I'm going to feel so bad. But after many hours of just working on them just straight, like it took me probably a week and a half worth of work, just a couple hours, few hours every single day, using my new airbrush on them and being able to complete them. I just thought, wow, this is like a next step. People are having me not just work on like, cheap local sneakers. These are handmade custom Italian sneakers. Working with crocodile skin, it's so much more different than working with regular sneakers, because when it comes to like a regular canvas, it's very static, it's very smooth. But with sneakers, it's very dynamic. There's raised, there's lowered, the shapes are odd. It's just kind of like painting with like a Rubik's cube. There's multiple sides to it, and you kind of have to look at every side differently. Now with the crocodile skin, because of the scales, it only allows me to paint one way, because with the scales, how they're raised and layered on top of each other, I couldn't paint backwards. I can only paint forwards. So when I paint, I'm usually used to spraying the paint back and forth. But with this, I have to like etch it very slowly, one at a time. And then even with the airbrush too. So that definitely added greater difficulty on top of working on a very expensive $1,200 pair of sneakers. It's definitely like painting a flat image on a curved surface, because when we're looking at an image, when it's curved, our eye manipulates it, looks different. So if we don't account for that curve and proportion the image differently, it's going to look funny. But if we're able to account for that curve and adjust the image accordingly, then it'll look flat. It'll look normal, like we're looking at a regular painting, despite the shoe having its curves, its edges, its layers. Essentially, taking like flat surfaces on a piece of paper or regular canvas, it was definitely its own type of demon to be able to master, to be able to work towards. And now that when I was working on sneakers, it was just an entirely another level of difficulty, because now it's a much more crammed area. And with the panels, now you're going to be painting, and when you go to an edge, now the panel's lowered, so you can't just continue the line accordingly, because then when you look at it on an angle, or because you have to look at it in a certain way. So when you paint, you have to paint it accordingly. So when you look at it, it looks static no matter how you rotate the sneaker, versus it'll look good if I look at it this way, but if I turn the sneaker a little, now the image is completely broken. I don't even know what I'm looking at. So essentially the way with my business works is I mostly run it off of Instagram, and I use like post some stuff on TikTok as well, because it's one of the newest growing social media platforms, and it's really easy with the algorithm to kind of get your work out there, and it's easy to have videos to go viral. I've had a couple of videos go viral on there, which gave traction and more attention towards my Instagram. People see my artwork on the search page on Instagram, and they'll typically look at my artwork. They'll DM me and say, "Hey, how much?" And I throw prices around and say I'm very lenient. It's very negotiable, because the biggest like leap around college was being able to sell sneakers to people who don't have a lot of money. So I've always been very negotiable on the price, finding something that's fair where I still make a profit, and that way they can wear them. Because the best part about sneakers, as far as artwork, is free advertisement. They're walking around, they're showing your sneakers to the world, instead of just a painting that's in your home. You don't walk around with a painting, you walk around with sneakers. So essentially what I like about TikTok is with the app, they have a lot of pretty good video editing software for free, where you can trim the video, you can add different effects, you can intermittently record. So when you put it all together, it kind of looks like a mini film. There was one where I showed off, I call them Gucci panels, where instead of taking a sneaker and gluing on the monogram, I did Velcro. So you take them on and off. And so I basically recorded the whole process, where I took the material, I went to go toss it. So right as it hit the sneaker, I would cut it. And so when I start recording again, it's like it magically appeared on the sneaker. So then it showed the whole process, like I'm just magically throwing these materials and it's building itself. Instagram, it has to be very photographically perfect, very photogenic. While TikTok, it could be a little messy. It's very fun. And like as long as it's fun, people like it. So if you're ever interested in customizing sneakers, the way I got into it is looking at social media such as Tumblr, Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok, Facebook, you name it, and especially YouTube. YouTube was a big teacher for me, because in the age of the internet, you can learn anything you want. You don't have to worry about cost of finding a teacher and then paying them by the hour to teach you all the materials and skills. You can just simply YouTube it, go to the store, be able to buy cheaper materials and work your way up towards building your artwork similar to what I did. and that you will make a lot of mistakes along the way. Every artist I've ever DM'd that does this, asking the same thing, did you make a lot of mistakes? And they said, absolutely. There's customer shoes I completely messed up. And I took the time to really fix them because it's a learning experience. And I tell myself that all the time. Whenever I make a mistake, it's a learning experience. So when I make sneakers for someone big, I'll be ready. So ultimately, as far as making custom sneakers, it's a wonderful experience. It's a very new world, and it's a new trend that a lot of people are learning how to do. And it's a new way to creatively express yourself. And if you ever have any questions or you're interested in a pair of sneakers, follow me on TikTok at Ellie Rufino or Instagram at Rufino Art. I hope to hear from you, and I hope you enjoyed this interview. Thank you.